Welcome dear students to Maratha Vidya Prasad Samaj, KRT Arts, BH Commerce and AM Science, Allies, KTHM College, Nasik. I am Mr. Satish Dharrao from the Department of Commerce. We are into class TYBCom 2013 annual pattern. The subject is Computer Programming and Application Paper 2 Computer Networks and our subject code is 305L, and we are going to discuss about the types of data transmission. Now, let us understand what is data transmission. Data transmission refers to the process of transferring data between two or more digital devices. So whenever we are into a process of sending and receiving data, that process is called as data transmission. So it is the transmission of signals between two or more digital devices. This data is transmitted from one device to another device either in analog or digital format. Analog is one type of data format, whereas digital is also the other type of data format. Nowadays all computing instruments, they follow the digital data format. Basically, data transmission enables devices or components within the devices to speak or to communicate with each other. This data transmission is of two types, parallel and serial. Now let us understand that how data transmission works between digital devices. So this digital devices, data is transferred in the form of bits between two or more digital devices. There are two methods to transmit data between digital devices. The first method is serial transmission and second is parallel transmission. Now how does the data transmits in serial transmission? In serial data transmission, data is sent one after another over a single channel. Remember here two words that you will have to remember regarding serial data transmission is one after another and single channel. So in serial data transmission, data bits, they are transferred through the single data channel one after another. Whereas in parallel data transmission, multiple data bits are sent at the same time over multiple channels. So first difference we had understood from this discussion here, that in serial transmission one data bits are sent one after another over a single channel, whereas in parallel data transmissions the data is sent parallelly or at the same time over multiple channels. Now we'll understand what is serial data transmission. What happens in serial transmission, that the data bits are organized in a specific order. Since they can be sent only one after another, therefore the order of the data bits is very important, as it dictates how the transmission is organized when it is received. It is viewed as a reliable data transmission method because a data bit is only sent if the previous data bit has already been sent. So what happens in serial transmission, that the data bits are sent one after another. So here the order of the data is very important, that see the order should be maintained here, that if here in their example you would see that the data bits are sent in the form of 0 0 1 0 1 1 1 1. So the same should be the order at the receiving end. If it is scrambled, then the data will be lost and there will be retransmission of the data. That is why it is very important to understand the order of the data bits in serial transmission. Serial transmission is of two types. It is classified as asynchronous and synchronous data transmission. Remember, serial transmission is a bit by bit transmission of data, whereas parallel transmission is transmitting data through multiple channels at the same time. Now in serial transmission we have two types, asynchronous and synchronous. What is asynchronous data transmission? To understand asynchronous, you should understand the meaning of synchronous. The word synchronous means along with. So I'm going to explain it in the reference in our synchronous transmission. For the time being, asynchronous data transmission means here no clock is required. Data bits can be sent at any point in time. That is, you don't have to match your clock for sending the data. For this asynchronous transmission, stop bits and start bits are used between data bytes to synchronize the transmitter and receiver. Remember here, in any kind of data transmission, the two entities involved are the transmitter and receiver. In asynchronous data transmission, start bit and stop bits are used. In between the start bits and stop bit, the data is transmitted. Here you could see this is the start bit. See my mouse movement here. The beginning is here start bit. So, and here is the stop bit. So between start bit and stop bit, the data is transmitted. So once the start bit is initiated, afterward the data is transmitted. So this data transmission, until the data stop bit is sent, the data transmission keeps on taking place. One after another, the bits are transferred. So this kind of transmission of data is called as asynchronous data transmission. So the advantages of using the asynchronous method is that no synchronization is required between the transmitting and receiving devices. That is, there is no common clock governing these two uh, receivers and transmitters. It is also a most cost effective method since no special hardware is required here as compared with the parallel data transmission. Therefore, it is more cost effective. The only disadvantages of this data transmission is that the data can be slower, but this is not always the case. So I'll summarize here serial data transmission, that in serial data transmission the data is transmitted one after another. You take a very simple example of transmitting the data using serial data transmission is your door of your house. Normally the door of your house is almost of the size 3 feet because not many people has to enter in your house at the same time. So one after another people enter your house and leave your house. So that is going to be the example of serial data transmission. And this serial data transmission is classified as asynchronous and synchronous data transmission. In asynchronous data transmission, the data bits are sent at any point of time. Whenever a start bit is sent, immediately the data transmission takes place until the stop bit is received. The drawback of this method of asynchronous data transmission is that the transmission rate may be slower. Then the next one type of serial transmission is the synchronous serial transmission. Here in this synchronous transmission, data bits are transmitted as continuous streams in sync with a master clock. The data transmitter and receiver both operate using a synchronized clock. Here synchronized clock means both matching the clocks, both the transmitters and the receivers, they will match their clocks before initiating the transmission of data. That is called as synchronous. So the data transmitter and receiver both operate using synchronized clock frequency. Therefore start bits, stop bits and gaps are not used here in synchronized transmission. If you see here in asynchronous transmission, see the movement of mouse here, start bit and stop bit is given, whereas in case of synchronous transmission you don't see any kind of start bit and stop bit. Why not? Because here the clocks of both the transmitter and receivers are synchronized or matched. Once the frequency is matched, then they start sending data across each other. So here this means that the data moves faster and timing errors are less frequent because the transmitter and receivers are synced. However, data accuracy is highly dependent on timing being synced correctly between the devices. In comparison with asynchronous serial transmission, this method is usually more expensive. Why it is more expensive? Because it is faster. How it is faster? Because both the communicating devices are synced with each other, so they transmit more fastly with each other. Let's move to the next type of transmission. The next type of transmission is the parallel transmission. In parallel transmission, data, I'll explain you more in more simple words what is parallel transmission. As I told you earlier, in serial transmission, the example is of your house. In your house, you have a small opening. Your door is very smaller, its width is very less, about 3 feet. So at a time, one person or at the max 2 person can come in and go out. Whereas, take the example of your shop. Your shop has wider opening. Why? You expect more and more people to enter your shop. So many people can come in and many people can go out. So many people can parallelly enter your shop. So that transmission is called as parallel transmission. In your colleges also see the staircases, they are more wider than the staircase which you have at your home, because there, in case of your college, the data transmission is parallel. In case of your college, more number of students are there who are using that resource as compared with your house. So I'll explain further that why we should go for parallel transmission. For the time being, you just understand that in parallel data transmission, multiple data bits are transmitted over multiple channels at the same time. That is, here in this figure you will see that multiple data bits are transmitted here at the same time between the sender and the receiver, whereas in serial only one bit is sent at a time in serial communication. This means that the data can be sent much faster than using serial transmission method. In serial transmission, only one bit at a time can be sent, whereas in parallel transmission, multiple bits can be sent over multiple channels at the same time. Thus, the data transmission is more faster. So when we need to go for parallel transmission, when a large amount of data is being sent. So, and you need to send this data very fastly. So in that case, parallel transmission is used. In computers, parallel transmission is normally used with your printers, monitors, where you need faster data transmission. Whereas your mouse, your keyboards, they are the examples of serial data transmission. I'll just summarize all these things in Marathi also. विद्यार्थी मित्रांनो, डेटा ट्रान्समिशन हे दोन प्रकारचं असतं. डेटा ट्रान्समिशन हे पॅरलल आणि सिरियल या दोन प्रकारचं असतं. त्या अगोदर आपण डेटा ट्रान्समिशन म्हणजे काय ते समजून घेऊया की डेटा ट्रान्समिशन म्हणजे एका डिजिटल डिव्हाइसमधून दुसऱ्या डिजिटल डिव्हाइसपर्यंत माहितीची देवाणघेवाण करणे, त्याला आपण डेटा ट्रान्समिशन म्हणूया. डिजिटल डिव्हाइसेस म्हणजे असे सर्व डिव्हाइसेस ज्याच्यात डिजिटल फॉर्मॅटमध्ये डेटा ट्रान्समिट केला जातो. उदाहरणार्थ आपला कम्प्युटर, आपलं मोबाईल ही डिजिटल डिव्हाइसेस आहेत. डेटा ट्रान्समिशन हा दोन प्रकारे होऊ शकतो, डिजिटल आणि ॲनालॉगमधला. आणि याच्यामध्ये जनरली हे कंपोनंट जे असतात हे एकमेकांशी डिजिटल फॉर्मॅटमध्ये संवाद साधत असतात. आता हे जे ट्रान्समिशन आपण बघितले, हे ट्रान्समिशन दोन प्रकारचे असतात. एक असतं सिरियल ट्रान्समिशन आणि दुसरं असतं पॅरलल ट्रान्समिशन. सिरियल ट्रान्समिशनमध्ये काय होत असतं, तर एका वेळेस एकच चॅनल असतो आणि एकामागून एक डेटा बिट ट्रान्सफर केली जाते. याचं एक सुंदर उदाहरण मी तुम्हाला दिलं होतं की आपल्या घराच्या दाराचं एक्झाम्पल दिलेलं आहे की आपल्या घराच्या दाराचं एक सिंगल चॅनल आहे. एकाच वेळेस आपण एक व्यक्ती किंवा एकामागून एक व्यक्ती घरामध्ये जातात आणि घरातनं बाहेर पडतात. पण दुसरं उदाहरण जे आहे डेटा ट्रान्समिशनचं, दुसरं एक्झाम्पल आहे ते आहे पॅरलल डेटा ट्रान्समिशन, ज्याच्यामध्ये एकाच वेळेस मल्टिपल डेटा बिट्स ॲट द सेम टाईम एकाच वेळेस मल्टिपल चॅनलमधून डेटा ट्रान्समिट करतात. तर पॅरलल ट्रान्समिशनचं जर का एक्झाम्पल द्यायचं ठरलं तर आपण दुकानांचे एंट्रन्स देऊयात की जिथे मल्टिपल लोक एकाच वेळेस आतमध्ये येऊ शकतात किंवा जाऊ शकतात. आता सुरक्षेच्या कारणाने काही मॉल्समध्ये एका वेळेस एकच व्यक्ती आतमध्ये जाते आणि एकच व्यक्ती बाहेर येते. तर मॉलमधलं जे एंट्रन्स आहे ते सिरियलचं एक्झाम्पल्स आहे. तर जनरली जी दुकानं तुम्ही बघतात ट्रॅडिशनल ती सगळी एक्झाम्पल्स कशाची आहेत? पॅरलल डेटा ट्रान्समिशन. तर एकाच वेळेस अनेक लोक आतमध्ये जाऊ शकतात आणि बाहेर येऊ शकतात. सो दॅट काइंड ऑफ ट्रान्समिशन इज कॉल्ड ॲज पॅरलल डेटा ट्रान्समिशन. हे जे सिरियल ट्रान्समिशन आहे याचे दोन प्रकार पडतात. एक आहे सिंक्रोनस ट्रान्समिशन आणि असिंक्रोनस ट्रान्समिशन. ह्या सिरियल ट्रान्समिशनमध्ये एक महत्त्वाची गोष्ट लक्षात घ्यायची आहे की तुम्हाला डेटा ट्रान्समिशन करताना त्याची ऑर्डर म्हणजे त्याचा क्रम महत्त्वाचा असतो. तो क्रम हा स्टार्ट बीट आणि स्टॉप बीटने आपण ठरवू शकत असतो. जसं मी तुम्हाला सांगितल्याप्रमाणे सिरियल ट्रान्समिशन दोन प्रकारचे, सिंक्रोनस आणि असिंक्रोनस. असिंक्रोनस ट्रान्समिशन जे आहे त्याच्यामध्ये तुम्हाला डेटा बिट्स एका वेळेस एक तुम्ही पाठवू शकतात. त्याच्यामध्ये तुम्ही त्यांच्यामधनं सिंक्रोनायझेशन करून आणण्यासाठी स्टार्ट बीट आणि स्टॉप बिट्स वापर केला जातो. ह्या पद्धतीचा सगळ्यात महत्त्वाचा फायदा काय आहे? तर याच्यामध्ये खास प्रकारचे काही विशिष्ट प्रकारचे महागाचे डिव्हायसेस तुम्हाला विकत घ्यायची गरज नाही आणि म्हणूनच ते कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव्ह आहे. याचा जो डिसॲडव्हान्टेज आहे तो म्हणजे तो थोडासा स्लो असू शकेल. एक खूप साहजिकच आहे ना की आपल्या घरात एका वेळेस समजा 5-50 लोक यायला लागली तर थोडा वेळ लागेल. पण तेच जर का मोठा दरवाजा असेल, शटर असेल, तर तेवढी लोक एका दरवाजापेक्षा जास्त वेगाने आतमध्ये येऊन बाहेर जाऊ शकतील. सो दॅट इज द ड्रॉबॅक ऑफ असिंक्रोनस, दॅट इट माइट बी स्लोअर. सिंक्रोनस ट्रान्समिशनमध्ये स्टार्ट बीट स्टॉप बीट नसतं, तर त्यामध्ये दोन्ही जे डिव्हायसेस असतात रिसिव्हिंग आणि ट्रान्समिटिंग डिव्हायसेस हे एकमेकांशी सिंक्रोनाइज केलेले असतात. म्हणून त्याला नाव दिलेलं आहे सिंक्रोनाइज. याच्यामध्ये डेटा ट्रान्समिशन थोडंसं फास्टर असतं, परंतु ही मेथड एक्सपेन्सिव्ह आहे. का एक्सपेन्सिव्ह आहे? तर तुम्हाला क्लॉक्स लागणार आहे, त्याच्यामध्ये एकमेकांशी मॅच करावं लागणार आहेत. तर तुम्हाला जरासं सुपिरियर हार्डवेअरची गरज लागणार आहे आणि म्हणूनच ही मेथड थोडीशी कॉस्टली आहे. व्हेरॅज असिंक्रोनस ही कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव्ह आहे. पुढचा प्रकार जो आपण डेटा ट्रान्समिशनचा बघितला तर तो होता पॅरलल ट्रान्समिशन. आपल्याला ज्यावेळेस ट्रान्समिशन फास्टर करायचं आहे त्यावेळेस फास्टर ट्रान्समिशनसाठी पॅरलल डेटा ट्रान्समिशनचा वापर केला जातो. यामध्ये मल्टिपल बिट्स एकाच वेळेस आपण मल्टिपल चॅनलच्या माध्यमातून एकाच वेळेस पाठवू शकतो. म्हणजे खूप सारा लार्ज अमाऊंट ऑफ डेटा कॅन बी सेंट आणि एकाच वेळेस आपण अनेक ठिकाणी पाठवू शकतो, म्हणून तो फास्टर पण आहे. अशा पद्धतीने आज आपण डेटा ट्रान्समिशन शिकलो. डेटा ट्रान्समिशनचे दोन प्रकार आहेत, पॅरलल आणि सिरियल. पॅरललमध्ये एकाच वेळेस अनेक डेटा बिट्स मल्टिपल चॅनल्सवर तुम्ही सेंड करू शकतात. तर तुम्ही सिरियल डेटा ट्रान्समिशनचे दोन प्रकार आहेत, सिंक्रोनस आणि असिंक्रोनस. असिंक्रोनसमध्ये तुम्हाला स्टार्ट बीट स्टॉप बीट लागतं, ती थोडंसं स्लोअर असेल सिंक्रोनसपेक्षा. या सगळ्या गोष्टींचा अभ्यास आपण आजच्या या सेशनमध्ये केलेला आहे. सो फॉर द टायमिंग टुडे विल स्टॉप हिअर. We'll meet into our next session. Goodbye. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra.